Hello, everybody, and welcome to another interview. Today, I am interviewing WavesOfRed. He is an animator for Inanimate Insanity. If you'd like to introduce yourself, go ahead. I know you do it a little bit more here and there.
Hello. Like they said, I am an animator for Inanimate Insanity, and I create a little show called Millennialistic.
Oh, wow. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, so Millennialistic was a show that I created back in I want to say 2021. It was a couple of years ago, and the whole thing was designed to kind of just be a regular sort of object show, but have the twist that like it's themed around the 2000s internet. And I thought, in a way, because I was making another show at the time called Retro Curiosities, I thought it would be kind of an interesting contrast to have a show in a similar vein, but just have it go in the completely opposite sort of direction in terms of technology. Retro Curiosities
Was
was
it
entirely designed. Oh, sorry.
was it a joke show?
Initially, but in many ways, I kind of wanted to apply some more serious bits of writing to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Episode 1, in many ways, I don't think has aged particularly great just because all the jokes are a little bit niche to outsiders who didn't grow up in that era. And niche jokes, whenever you learn about them, are fine, but it's not good to have them all the time. Otherwise, you'll just leave everyone totally confused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a lot of issues. I think that's an issue with a lot of object shows is that they'll have a lot of inside jokes that
Yeah.
that like nobody's gonna get unless you're in that circle. Like, if you're gonna make an inside joke, at least make it understandable to the other viewer.
Right. And some jokes weren't even like inside jokes. Some parts were just like MSN's whole character, or like the whole joke of their character, was that the audio quality was terrible. And in many ways, I mean, the audio quality was already bad on the whole episode to, begin with because it's been compressed down. But in many ways, people just did not understand what they were saying at all, and I think in many ways it made some of the more dialogue-based jokes that they have a little bit unrecognizable.
Yeah. Uh. All right. I opened the wrong notepad file. Oh God. Okay. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Give me a minute. Crap. Okay. Alright. Technical difficulties, guys. Where is it? It saved, didn't it? Oh God. Okay. Crap. Alright. I remember my first question, though. How did you get into animation?
Well, I got into animation just because I think ever since I was like 3 years old, I've always had an interest in art. I think one of the earliest memories I have going back to art was watching Blue's Clues and just drawing whatever Steve was drawing on the
Oh my
TV, or
God, I loved
Joe, or
Blue's
just whoever
Clues.
was the host during that time when I was young. But I guess from there I just learned to do my own thing and do my own art. Um I didn't get into animation until I saw a lot of old like Flash Sonic cartoons and just sprite animations. And I think for many years I wanted to try and replicate that. If you really want a deep cut from way back when, I used to take like a bunch of Sonic sprite sheets. I made like little scenes in Windows and like Microsoft Paint, and then I would put them together in like an old Windows Vista version of Movie Maker. It was the absolute crudest thing you could have done, but it was fine. I worked with what I had. And then fast forward a few years later, I was interested in making my own cartoon, and funny thing is I was looking up tutorials on YouTube on how to make that, and I stumbled across Animation Epic's Adam's old tutorial series on how to make a cartoon. And from that point, I kind of discovered object shows by complete accident, and in many ways, I think Inanimate Insanity is what kind of kickstarted my interest in animation.
Hmm.
And I guess over time, I just ended up getting better and better, and now I'm studying it in university.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, could you go into a little bit more depth on how you got into the OSC? Because you mentioned that a little bit before.
Right.
Could you go in more depth?
Um, Again, I found the OSC by complete accident. I just saw Adam's old tutorials and I was like, what is this? I've never seen anything like this. And I went into their channel a little bit and I watched episodes of Inanimate Insanity and I was like, hey, this is like actually really funny. And then I saw more. One of the things that got me into it was just seeing time lapses of people animate certain object shows. Like, I'm pretty sure back in the days when everyone used to use Anime Studio, now mostly everyone's just transitioned over to Flash or Animate.
Mm-hmm.
I used to watch those time lapses all the time, like whenever Wuggalo was doing time lapses of animating their old show, I used to watch it all the time. And I thought it was really cool just kind of seeing the technical aspects of how things were done. And just in many ways, that kind of made me want to make my own show for the longest time.
So, like, was it kind of a natural thing with getting into animation in the OSC, or did you want to make an object show and then that kind of spread off to you wanting to pursue animation?
I wanted to make my own show from the very beginning, but I guess after a bit, I learned reality kind of sets in is just how difficult it is to actually just make a show like that to begin with, even if, you're kind of like a one person thing. And then I guess after that, I was mainly interested in the animation aspect of it. And then it just kind of narrowed down more down into just animation.
All right. Next question here. What is it like working for Inanimate Insanity?
People ask me this a lot, and um, it. I'll be honest, it was kind of cool at first, but then I guess after a bit, it just becomes a little bit normal. Um, I will admit it is kind of cool, working on the show that personally inspired me, and it's cool having that same sort of effect on any sort of aspiring OSC creator. You know, people who probably are like me and just discovered the show for the first time and want to do something like that. And I think it's cool to just, come to terms with just the fact that you're a little bit a part of just continuing that cycle of inspiration for people. And I think ultimately as an artist, that's probably one of the best things you could probably do.
So, what have you recently been working on? Have you been working on an Animate Insanity Invitational, or have you been working on an Animate Insanity Season 2?
Uh, okay, so Inanimate Insanity 2 has been put on hold for a while, at least while season 3 is going on. So I guess that has just kind of been my primary focus.
Um, do you like? Okay, I don't want to. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but like, is there like any details you could give out on like any updates with will it ever be taken out on hold, or like do you see it like coming back or at all, or
Personally, I think it probably will come back because I'm pretty sure Brian has said numerous times on Twitter that season 2 is still happening and they're still wanting to do it. They're just taking a break with season 3 and
yeah.
just getting themselves used back to basics, considering, and yeah, I 100% get it, just because in comparison, season 3 is a lot less.
Lighthearted. It's more lighthearted.
Yeah, it's much less
Well,
lore heavy in
yeah,
comparison to season 2,
yeah.
but
I mean, yeah. I remember I went back and watched an Animate Insanity season 2, and I remember like laughing a lot more and enjoying myself.
right,
And personally, what I look for in object shows, with the exception of one, is just I just want to have a good time. If I want to go watch a drama, I'll go watch like a drama show.
right.
But
And
that's yeah.
I guess from a technical perspective, season 3 is a little bit less advanced than season 2, and in many ways I kind of prefer some of the aspects of season 2 a little bit more, but I think season 3 is still. I'm still happy I actually got to work on this thing and just, just kind of get myself into this industry a little bit. even if it's not necessarily professional, it gives me a little bit of just that feeling as to what it may actually be like.
What is what does Inanimate Insanity Invitational run at? Like what are the frames per second?
Uh, okay,
I know
so
it's a bit
and I,
slower.
yeah, season 2 runs at 24 frames per second, but the thing that kind of gives it its signature look is that everything is animated on twos, and in animation terms, that basically means a frame for like a character posing on. So like season 1 or like sorry, season 2 was animated all on ones, and that's why it looks so smooth. Season 2 is a little bit choppy, I guess, because each frame lasts for 2 frames instead of lasting for only one.
Mm-hmm.
I've experimented with it a little bit in my most recent scenes. Some parts I've done on fours, some parts I've done on ones, and I think in comparison, I think just experimenting like that gives you a little bit of
Yeah.
leeway as to what you might like and what you don't like. And I'm kind of happy I did experiment with it because it makes the animation feel a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah. What is like easier to work with? Is it easier to work on ones, twos, fours? Like what's easier to work with for animation?
Well, I wouldn't say one is necessarily easier because in reality, it still requires the same amount of work. It's just a completely different method of doing it. But I like doing twos a little bit more than ones because it gives me a little bit more control over just what the animation is, or just like how the character of certain movements are. And
Mm-hmm.
usually with tweens are extremely limited in their functionality. Some people I know are just like some people I've seen like Ivan has really just made it work incredibly well, and I really do not know how they do it, but they managed to do it. And I guess in certain aspects frame by frame has been a little bit more liberating because it gives you more control over those little minute
Mm-hmm.
details in comparison. I mean, tweening is definitely faster, but frame by nothing can ever really just be frame by frame.
Yeah. Well, frame by frame. Oh my god. Excuse me, I had a freaking biggest voice crack.
Don't
Um.
worry, it happens to me too.
So frame by frame is pretty time consuming, right?
Yeah, I guess it is time consuming, but in a way it feels a little bit more rewarding.
Yeah, I would assume so. I
Hmm.
mean, I guess you could be a lot more specific with frame by frame, right?
Yeah.
And how like dynamic you want to get. Um, would you say that? Would you say that you prefer frame by frame animation to what you're doing now, or?
In many ways, yeah, I think I do prefer frame by frame because I don't know, it gives it a certain character that
Mm-hmm.
I guess animating on ones doesn't really have. And I know some people on the crew do entirely like tweened animation first and then just convert it to frame by frame.
Yeah.
Though in reality, what I do is that I animate everything on frame by frame. I barely use tweens anymore. Just because well, like I previously stated, it has a certain thing to it.
Would that not make the animation from scene to scene, or from animator to animator, kind of look like different? I mean, there's no way to totally stop that, but I think it'd be a little bit more noticeable, right?
Maybe a little. It just entirely depends on how the animator does things.
Mm-hmm.
Um some parts are definitely a bit noticeable of what might be tweened and what might be just frame by frame, but I think to the average viewer, they don't necessarily I guess it doesn't necessarily matter as much.
Hmm.
That I guess that's just the best way I can really describe it. I don't know.
All right. So, how strict are storyboard excuse me. How strict are storyboard directions? Can you go off on your own thing? Does it have to be exact? Like how does it work?
Well, I think the thing is you're given a little bit of leeway in terms of breaking storyboards because I I've break I've broken storyboards quite a bit of times with just certain
Yeah.
poses that I think work a little bit better. Well, some parts, and I guess for some parts, they did give me a little bit of leeway for that. And well, most of the time, you'd want to try and stay on storyboards as much as you can because, like, changing entire shots like that could probably change the whole effect of a scene. I think in my most recent one, I learned that just because there's one specific camera angle that I did differently from the storyboards and just
Mhm.
it didn't work out as well, so I just kind of had to go back and redo it. But I guess that's just taught me stick to storyboards. And yeah,
Like, how often have you been told that? Like, how often have you been told to like redo an animation part?
it's not very often. I'll be honest. Usually because I always try to stick to storyboards, but sometimes I get a little bit creative and I want to try and experiment with something and see how they like. And
Hmm.
but usually it's never. It doesn't happen too often that they ask me to change a certain thing.
So, depending on how far you want to go with this, we can end the question off right here, or we can continue. I'm just curious. So, are you? Is it paid? Is the position paid?
Yes, actually, the position is paid. I mean, it's not exactly something you could live off of, but
Yeah.
it pays sufficiently for a web series like this. But yeah,
Yeah.
we could probably go a little bit further if there's any other questions you may have.
Is there any? Is there any specific like? You don't have to give me like an exact budget, but how much do you get per scene?
Uh,
I don't know. Are we allowed to even be asking these questions?
I don't know, but all I don't want to say how much I make just because I don't want to get the impression that I'm like showing off or anything. But
No, it's fine.
I guess for a little bit of just information, it entirely just depends on the length. There's a certain rate you get paid at for the length, but how much you get paid in the end, it depends on how much animation you're doing.
Hmm. Can you choose your own scene, and like, or is it like assigned to you?
I guess you can have certain preferences on what you would want to animate, like on a certain episode, but usually, at least in my case, they were always assigned to me.
Hmm.
On BFB, it was a little bit different because there was like this giant spreadsheet, and animators could pick out the scenes that they wanted, and just what stuff they wanted to do, and just all that
Hmm.
different stuff. Whereas it's completely just managed by the key three, and
Used to be key for.
right, yeah, but um, yeah, I guess they have a little bit more control in what that has to do with certain things.
Hmm.
And I don't think I don't really have any. I've never really had a problem with a scene that they've assigned me. I think I've always enjoyed every scene that I did.
Hmm.
And yeah.
So, how hard was it to transition from the kind? Well, I mean, they're both kind. I guess kind of cartoony, but BFB and Inanimate Insanity, they both have two different art styles. So
Right.
how hard was that transition to go from kind of like a blocky, more edgy texture to rounder, more hand drawn style?
Uh well, the thing is, I don't think transitioning from it was necessarily hard because I've been animating like what II has been doing for years, years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just a simple frame rate change wasn't too anything to write home about. BFB, on the other hand, I think I struggled a lot more with because, especially with drawing people like 2 and 4, because those two have to be drawn a very certain way in order to not feel like it's completely out of place. And I know Whoop
Mm-hmm.
Do I think does it a bit differently. Like I think they used to use rigs for all their scenes rather than most animators on BFB drew the arms and legs as they were doing it. And I guess
Yeah.
in certain ways, yeah, in certain ways it does feel a little bit more organic and just kind of freestyle. And there's a certain aspect of that that I really do kind of like, but in comparison, I think my II scenes ends up just looking a little bit better
Yeah.
because with hand drawn animation, there's no telling unless you get something super perfectly on model, there is going to be a little bit of inconsistencies between one scene that you're doing and another person. So I guess whenever I end up watching a scene from III a little bit more, it feels a little
Yeah.
bit more seamless in comparison to what my BFB scenes were.
Do you prefer hand drawn over um like how like I don't know what to call an anime insanities. I would just call it Flash, right? It's animated
Yeah,
Flash mostly.
I guess you
Um,
could just call it rigged.
yeah. Do you prefer rigged animation to hand drawn, or is it vice versa?
It depends on what I'm doing. If I want to do something very just freestyle and just all over the place, I think frame by frame works a little bit better. But if I'm doing something that's just very simple and grounded, rigged animation does that job a little bit better. It makes things look a little bit smoother in comparison.
Mm-hmm. Somebody should make a CGI animated object show.
I believe it or not, I've actually seen one back in the day.
Oh wow, really?
It was like a I think it might have been like called Code Mercenary or something. It was like if you've ever seen like Killer Bean, it was done in a very similar vein to that,
TF2.
where it's just like a bunch of these objects and they're just like in these very actiony
Mm-hmm.
scenarios in 3D in 3D. But yeah, other than that, I really there's been examples where actually the Indefinite Island of Inanimate Insanity Invitational, that was entirely 3D. And then they just put 2D characters over it. I've only seen stuff like that where it's a mixture of 2D and 3D, or like a folder in one. But I've never seen too many people do like a fully 3D object show. It's only just been used for specific cases like that.
Yeah, if anybody decides to do that, I get 20% of your entire budget because I came up with the idea.
Right.
I just want to be clear. I've been talking about money a lot. I'm not greedy. Trust me. It's all for jokes. It's all for jokes, guys. Trust me. Trust me. Um, so, so what's your favorite scene that you've animated?
God, I'd have to think about that. I think I really do like all the scenes that I've done, but I think one of my favorite scenes has to be I'm trying to remember one of the ones that I did.
What show was that from?
I know it was from II specifically. Um I think my favorite one may have been I think my favorite ones may have been from episode 10. I just really like how the second one came out. I really like the acting that Silver Spoon did whenever he
Yeah.
stomps away. I'm just really proud of that one little moment. And I think as a whole, that was probably just animation wise my favorite thing I've ever done.
So what made it so? What made it so? What made it your favorite?
I think looking back, the acting that Silver Spoon did and
Mm-hmm.
just the general smoothness and just how cohesive everything felt in comparison to some of my later stuff.
Is
And
it?
I think what?
Sorry,
Sorry.
no, you can go.
Um and I think just yeah, I think in comparison that one just felt a little bit more polished, I think in comparison to what I later previously did, but yeah.
Do you prefer like is it better to animate like more serious scenes where like characters are getting in arguments, or do you enjoy like more silly kind of stuff?
Honestly, it can go either which way. Usually I like animating more just dramatic scenes like that because it really allows me to play with some of the acting and some of the expressions that go into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I don't like lighthearted scenes. I think in comparison I just like the mood of those scenes a little bit more.
All right. Lightning round. Make an object show with 5 characters, a host, 5 challenges, and a winner. You have a minute to do so. You have a minute to do so. No,
A
no, right
minute.
now. I
Okay.
need to set my timer. You have a minute. You have a minute to make that. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so you got a tablet pen, a webcam, you got a guitar, you got a friggin' you got a record player or something, and you got a wallet, and their first challenge is to see who can shut up the longest, and uh the second challenge is to I'm oh my god, this is hard. This is hard. um you gotta the first one to jump off a cliff and to not kill themselves wins. Oh my god, I don't think I should be saying things like that, but
It doesn't matter.
um uh the next challenge is to go get me DoorDash or something, I don't know. And uh the winner would be wallet just because they bribed the host so they can win. Oh my god.
All right. So, what would you consider the hardest part of animation?
uh Starting it. Because to me, animation's always just been like a thing of, okay, I start it, and then I just slog through the early stages. I try to get past the early stages as fast as I can, so I can have a little bit more fun actually getting towards the middle of it.
What would
And
the sorry.
the best part of doing animation, finishing it, and just realizing, oh hey, I actually made something really cool, and just yeah,
Yeah, the best part of my job is finishing it.
right. No, most artists that I know don't like starting things, but they like finishing it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of the same thing with like your lawn. Like you hate doing it, but then you look back, you have your hands on your hips, khaki shorts on with your belt, nice shirt on, you're looking back, hands on your hips. I think I mentioned
Right.
that, and you're just looking, sun's in the west, and you're just like, yeah, I did great. I did great. My
Animation
lawn looks great.
animation can be a pretty monotonous thing at points. I'm not gonna deny that. Lip
Hmm.
syncing especially. I'm looking at you. But the best part is just looking back on it and just saying, "Hey, I actually did something that was worth it today. Congratulations, me."
All right. What would you say to any aspiring animators?
What would I say to any aspiring animators? My biggest thing is to just don't hold yourself back from doing something. Just do it, because animation is definitely one of those things that you won't learn anything from it unless you just do it. Unless you do it. No one has started out at a good stage at animation unless they're like absolutely gifted or something. But most people I know did not start off amazing at animation.
Hmm.
It takes time. And as long as I guess you just have that perseverance, you'll get somewhere with it. And also another thing is just don't be so hung up about what kind of stuff you use for animation. I mean, like I previously stated, I used to do sprite animations and Movie Maker and Paint. But I didn't get Flash until maybe I was like, I don't know, like 10 years old when I pirated it off some sketchy
Yeah.
website. But don't let that one thing stop you from doing your absolute best, because it's not about what tools you use, it's just how you use them.
All right. So, Do you ever want to do something bigger than animation? Like eventually?
Eventually, yeah, I've been experimenting with a bunch of different things. Like, recently I got a lot into audio and just music production.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in many ways it's kind of just helped me realize, oh hey, these skills could probably actually help me in the future. So I'm keeping those things in mind and just and also recently too, getting I've been wanting to do just get better at writing and just because the animation is a pretty big important part of a thing, but the writing is really what makes people come back to it. And I'll admit I haven't been the best writer in many for recent years, but I want to say I'm trying my best in certain things, and hopefully one day I want to like try and maybe direct something. I don't know. It just entirely depends on where the wind takes me.
So, you want to go? So you're going to animation school. That's what you're studying, correct? I don't know if it's
Yes.
animation school. So, what do you like want to do after the OSC? Unfortunately, like inevitably like fades away.
Or just like I lose enough interest.
Yeah.
um I'll be honest, I haven't thought too much on it, but I think one thing I want to do, I really want to I want to be like a background designer or background painter on some animated production because I think in comparison to characters, like backgrounds feel like something that too many people just don't take really much interested in or just like take much
Hmm.
interest in, but once you really get down to it, it turns out backgrounds are actually absolutely amazing because you have control over the environment and just the lighting and all these different little things that make the scene.
Yeah.
And I I don't know. I think I really want to try and do something like that.
Well, yeah, but the and I'm not demeaning your work, obviously.
Right.
The backgrounds are kind of supposed to be the back to the ground.
Right. Yeah.
It's not supposed to. You're not really supposed to think too hard about it. Cause I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna be watching BFDI and maybe like, ooh, that background's really good. I'm gonna watch the entire show just looking
Yeah.
at the backgrounds.
Yeah, unfortunately that's like the thing about them is that like not too many people take interest in them, but at the same time you still kind of have to make them look
Yeah.
absolutely just the best they can be and just many it's one of those weird things that I have. I like looking at the little details of things rather than just seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah. So I imagine you like Picasso.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um. I forgot what I was gonna ask. Crap. Um. So. Um. Uh. What was the first animation thing that you did?
Oh. Oh. Oh my god. That what was the first animation thing I ever did?
Yeah.
If we're talking in terms of the first animation ever, probably something on like a stack of post-it notes back when I was really, really young. I used to watch like a ton of flipbook channels back when those were
Animation. Did you watch animation?
yeah, that
Yeah.
wasn't
The,
until much later period of my life though, I'll be honest. But
I love them.
I used to watch a bunch of maybe maybe someone in the audience might recognize this, but I used to watch it, I'm trying to remember his name.
There's a whole flipbook channel community. That's so weird to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I one of the ones I used to watch was Bloody Renegade X. That was the
Mm-hmm.
most 2012 name you can probably think of. But they did a bunch of like Sonic animations on flipbooks and I just thought that was really cool and there was another YouTuber. They used to do like a bunch of Dragon Ball animations on flipbook too. I think their name might have been called like Etoic One or something like that. They'd probably go by a completely different name now, or I don't know what happens. But they used to do a bunch of Dragon Ball animations. Even if some of them were traced, I thought I just thought it was really cool.
Uh, yeah. Well, what's the first computer animation that you did?
The first computer anime. Okay, okay. If we're not talking Windows Movie Maker era, it was probably some really old pivot animations that I did back in
Probably
the
something
day.
on Newgrounds.
I actually didn't use Newgrounds.
Oh wow,
Most
really?
Yeah, I didn't. I used to go onto Newgrounds and just watch other people's stuff, but I never personally just had an account. Most of my early
Mhm.
animations back in the day are probably lost to time now. And most of those animations I just kind of kept to myself and my family for the longest time before, I discovered stuff like the OSC and I wanted to make my own stuff for, I guess, the internet.
Mhm. What's the what's your favorite show that you've animated other than the one that you primarily work on? Inanimate Insanity and
What's my
Invitational.
favorite show that I've
Yeah,
worked on? Um One of them I definitely say, well, is Inanimate Insanity, but
obviously.
I think another one of my other favorite shows that I think I've worked on is other than maybe some of the episodes of BFB, I want to say uh maybe yeah, I can't really think of too much other than the ones that I've just listed, but I'm sure there's tons of them. I just can't think of them at the moment.
So, how involved would you say you'd be in the OSC?
Not as much as I am anymore, I'll be honest. Um I don't really work on some shows anymore. I guess just my main primary thing is Inanimate Insanity. Just because I think in recent years too, I've just moved on to other creative interests like well, other than music. I've really been getting into the horror community and just analog horror and stuff like that.
Have you watched Skinamarink?
I haven't actually. I've heard
Huh.
about it and I really want to watch it one day because it looks cool.
Arg.
Um, yeah.
Arg me mateys. Arg me mateys. The Pirate Bay. Um, I think that's all I have. If you have any questions for me, I've never asked anybody that.
Well, I
Um,
mean, you're the interviewer, so
on the spot right now, think of a question for me.
uh
I need to
uh
fill time.
what's your favorite analog horror series?
Uh, ooh, I don't know what constitutes. I would probably say this is pretty obvious. This is like pretty generic. Local 58. Um,
Yeah.
if we're
Yeah,
gonna
Local
go,
58.
if we're gonna go like, if we're gonna go like just horror in general, like internet horror. Right now, it's The Sun Vanished.
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot about that. Oh, they were really cool.
Yeah, it's still
Um,
going on.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
I think personally to answer that question, my favorite analog horror series, I don't know if it constitutes as analog horror anymore, but the Mandela Catalog. I know that's like a
That's pretty
favorite for
good.
most people, but I think in terms of analog horror, that one has affected me the deepest. I remember after watching one of the volumes and I was like trying to go to sleep in my room. It was pitch black. And
Ooh.
I am not kidding. My closet door was open and I just like I got up, I turned the lights on and I just closed it just so it wasn't open for me to see. I don't the friggin' I think the scariest scene, at least to me, was probably
Mhm.
the one from the most recent thing the with the Face Studio 2 thing and like the dark room with the TV and the girl hanging. That one personally
Mm.
got under my skin the most. I didn't I just it's a good series, but it doesn't sit well.
um, I think The Monsters Beneath Us is a pretty good one too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
And
Monuments Beneath
I
Us.
think well, this one's kind of just a classic in terms of internet horror. Marble Hornets.
Oh my
You
god,
can't
I could go
go wrong
on
with it.
about Marble Hornets for
You can't go
hours.
wrong with that show. You just can't.
Yeah, that's the oh my god, that's the original Slender Man.
Right.
that is the original Slender Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's it for the interview. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on and coming on another week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're really good. Um,
Hmm.
any closing remarks?
Um, closing remarks. You know,
Any channels to subscribe to? Social media follow?
follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is WavesOfRed1, and just subscribe to my YouTube channel, Waves of Red. And yeah.
Hmm? And yeah, that will be all for this interview. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.